Hello friend, my name is Doombib, and today we are going to be talking about Eroge, H mo game mo kaihatsu zanmai, which we are going to be referring to as Eroge from here on out because I completely wrecked that name. Eroge is a censored 5-episode miniseries that was produced by Collaboration Works and ran from 2011 to 2014. It's about a guy named Tomoya who is just an average Joe working at a convenience store but really wants to make Eroge games despite having no real qualities that would ever apply to the gaming industry. He answers an employment ad to work as an administrator for Studio Flower, where he then realizes that the reason their games aren't selling very well is because none of the game creators have really any idea what goes into sex. So then he takes it upon himself to teach them in a very 3D way. Unlike a lot of hentai, this actually had a legitimate story that not only was enjoyable, but it featured actual character development. Not very good character development, but when the bar for hentai is set relatively low, it's not difficult to find yourself impressed. Momoko starts out as this crazy man-hating bitch, but then learns that men not only have legitimate feelings, but they do actually have sexual preferences just outside of tits. When the series started, I couldn't stand the way she addressed the main character, but by the end she was actually tolerable to have on screen because she actually treated him like a human being. Kisara doesn't move from her stereotypical tsundere character cutout, but she shifts enough to where her character feels like a very good match for Tomoya. Because by the end, she treats him a lot less like a nuisance and more as someone that she feels she can become a partner with. Now those were the two main romance interests. There were two other characters in Studio Flower, Nene and Yuri. However, she really only had, I think, 2 or 3 scenes where she actually had legitimate screen time and wasn't just there in the background. And Nene was actually just there in the background pretty much the entire 5 episodes. I am kind of thankful for that because Nene is obviously just there to pander to the audience that has a loli complex, and Yuri is into some really weird shit. Both of those make me relatively uncomfortable, so like I said, I was kind of glad that they didn't get a whole lot of screen time. Now, Tomoya grows from a very awkward, soft-spoken, kind of shy guy into someone who definitely has a sense of confidence, but he doesn't really understand the word no. I get that it's sort of a thing in hentai where the receiving characters are like, oh no, don't do that, is like some sort of way to save face, which is really stupid, but Tomoya never even really reacted to the word, and he just kind of forced his wants onto Kisara and Momoko. There's actually one scene where he genuinely raped Momoko, and they just kind of laughed it off. Like, that was the end of that. There were no repercussions, no one ever brought it up later in the series, and as far as the story went, it just never happened. That really bothered me. The writers also don't seem to really know how the human body works either, because they seem to think that a guy can go from being a virgin to having 3 to 4 orgasms in a row and then getting right back up to stick it in again. From what I understand, that's really not how it works unless you're an experienced porn actor or very into the orgy scene, where you can just get hard on demand and go at it. They also had the same issue with boobs. Unlike what you see in the scenes with Momoko, boobs don't just make a big old wet mess just for the sake of being sexy or whatever. You actually have to be pregnant or you have to be under very specific circumstances, and Momoko did not meet either of those criteria. However, those were the only parts of the story that actually came off as negative. The characters weren't exactly 3-dimensional, but they were well created enough for a story snob like myself to really appreciate them. It did suffer the same fate that a lot of hentai face though, and that's the really annoying play-by-play script where one of the people in the scene is just giving live commentary like this is a baseball game and they're on the radio. I mean, I can see what's happening on the screen. I don't need you to tell me, believe me, I know what's going on. Despite Eroge having very obvious hentai bodies, I liked the design of the characters, especially the eyes. Their eyes had a really nice coloring and shading that represented a style that you don't see all too often. And each female character was pretty visually appealing once you got a good look at them. And I'm not talking about when they're As for world design, the series primarily took place in the studio that they work in. The room the characters work in emphasize just how small of a production team they really are, because not only is there barely enough room for their 5 desks to comfortably fit, but the studio also doesn't have any AC. Granted, that led to some unnecessary scenes where they're all sitting around in their underwear saying, "Oh, it's so hot, I'm just gonna start pulling off my clothes." But at its core, this is a porn, so I can't hold it against the creators for that. I can, however, hold their complete lack of understanding for the human body against them. Because according to the creators, for some reason, boobs are like really big marshmallows, and if you squeeze them, they just kind of like encompass your entire hand and just kind of get stuck in there. It doesn't really work that way. Boobs aside, the main character's goobly glop was like unloaded by the freaking gallon, and it had this really weird texture where it looked like really weirdly thick whipped cream or really gross cottage cheese. And that was kind of weird. As for the sex scenes in general, they were okay. I mean, some parts were just kind of like meh, but a lot of that had to do with the voice acting, which I'll get to later. The only scenes that really were interesting were mostly because they were either really weird, like with Yuri's scenes, or with Momoko because they got really kind of weird with her. The only thing that really stood out at me was how every character that the main character got with had that weird ahegao? I don't know how to pronounce it. But that really weird, like, getting silly face, which was actually kind of comical at first, but then it just got really annoying to look at. This probably would have been better off as just a typical harem series than a hentai. They got just about everything wrong in the sexual aspects, especially with the voice acting. No joke, the women sounded like they were just dying pigs. They didn't actually sound like humans having sex, and it was really kind of disturbing, and there were a few times where I was just like, nope, muted that shit. There were also some moments where I wasn't really sure if this was supposed to be a porn or a comedy, because there were a lot of moments where I like actually laughed out loud while my husband was trying to play ESO. And then there were some moments where it kind of seemed like I was supposed to be taking it seriously. This mainly had to do with how it generally presented itself, but it really had to do a lot with the soundtrack as well, because the soundtrack was very lively, and it had a kind of a don't take it seriously kind of feel to it. So would I suggest this to a friend? Hell yes. It was very fun to watch, and the story wasn't half bad. Just don't expect to get off on it, because honestly that's probably not going to happen. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Eroge H mo game mo kaihatsu zanmai. God, that is such a long name. Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, you can find all of my social media in the description below. Happy unbirthday, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! On the 24th, Activision announced a new multi-stage mission in Destiny that will be available in the Taken King expansion. Sounds cool, right? Well, in order to be granted access to that mission, you need to buy a can of specially marked